Hello there and welcome. I'm Yukiko Amaya, and I'm so glad you're here for the Goddess and Energy Coming Alive podcast live today. And I'm really excited to speak with Dr. LaShanda Brown, who is a burnout prevention strategist. And today's topic is navigating the world as an intuitive. So, first of all, in these podcasts, I'm really interested in looking at the unseen world of energy, aliveness, the sacred, and how we are in relationship with the world around us and within us. For me, the goddess is all these, and she is the energies of life that's present everywhere and in everything. So she's the web of life that connects us with all that is, has been, and will be. In a way, it's like a circular time where time ceases to exist and everything is happening at the same time. And through my connection to that web, she enables me to enter into the circle of life where I'm able to learn from the wisdom of life, all the wisdoms that's been deposited in this great library, all the experiences of the trees and plants and birds and animals and insects and humans, stones and water and, all of that. And it's also looking at, through these conversations I'm having, how this connection with the other world or with this energetic sacred world can help us navigate in our everyday lives of work and play, of relationships, of money, health, and well-being. So today I'm really, really excited to introduce you to my friend and a special guest, Dr. LaShanda Brown. She offers holistic strategies for nurses who are overwhelmed, fatigued, and on the verge of burnout. She works with clinicians who are ready to apply self-care strategies to improve energy, mental clarity, and job satisfaction, while also enjoying fewer sick days, sluggish days, body aches, and pains. Wouldn't that be great? She also leads yoga and meditation workshops for women on self-healing retreats. LaShanda has worked as a nurse for 25 plus years, 10 of those as a nurse practitioner, educator, and researcher. She's also an intuitive and an inner alchemist who works with such tools as dream work and crystals, tarot, and astrology. She's also a yoga and meditation teacher. She brings these mystical approaches to solving practical problems. And she's used these same self-care strategies to revive and revamp her own career, taking it in directions she never knew were possible. Good. So welcome, LaShanda, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. It's always interesting, these conversations that we have and how they wind and twirl. So very
I
excited.
know. Yes, yes. And it was so much fun traveling together in Ireland with all those stones and energies and the goddess energies and the wild nature, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Life changing, like
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what was so powerful about the trip and the way that you lead these types of journeys is that I felt like I brought a new version of myself home with tools that I can integrate into my daily life. And that's why we go, right? So that we can come back evolved, even if it's just a little bit, and have tools to
Yeah.
move forward. So that's what I really appreciate about traveling with you.
Oh, great. Yes. And it was so much fun.
It was.
I'm because I I'm also an intuitive, and I'm sure there are many intuitives and empaths, um, listening in. How when did you find out that you were an intuitive?
It took a really, really long time. Growing up
Okay.
as a child, as a part of the Southern Baptist Church, there was no word for that. You would see prophets and things like that in our church, and they were kind of like a select few people who were in touch with the divine. But it was always felt like someone else had other advanced spiritual gifts, and that wasn't me. So I never tried to own that or felt like it was a part of me. And then as I evolved and just started really exploring and going deeper in my spiritual journey, I started to learn new language and new tools for how to connect with the divine. And that's when I kind of first tapped into this idea of being first tapped into the idea of being an empath as just a different way of experiencing the world and learning that it's not something you choose. It's just something, it's just the way that you're tapped in. It's like one of your, I don't want to say love languages, but it's just like one of your ways that you communicate. And I learned that earlier on in probably my nursing career. Um,
Mhm.
and I learned it in a backhanded way. So I learned that I had to almost close off myself to protect my energy because the day could otherwise get so heavy. And so, like, I could not only feel people's emotional pain and suffering that were my patients, I could also sometimes feel their physical pain and
Oh
feel if
wow,
they're
yeah.
describing something, I could feel it in my body. And my only thought at the time was, that's weird and inconvenient. Let me figure out how to stop this, you know? And so you take a while just kind of running from it, and when it really peaked, once my mom was had come home from work and she burned her foot. And as she was telling me, she pulls her shoe off to show me, and I almost dropped to the floor. I felt this intense pain in my foot, and I thought, "What is this? What's happening here?" And that's when I started kind of seeking out, what does this mean, and what is this about, and how do I manage this? Because I can't be a
Mhm.
nurse in the hospital and working in people's homes and be so open to all of this information, all of these sensations.
Wow. So those of you listening in, if this is something that sounds familiar to you, I invite you to, um, put it in the comments sections, and you know, if this makes sense, or if this is something that you have felt or that you have worked with, how you relate to it, please post it in the comments section because we would love to know. Um, so being a nurse and having that kind of an empathic um, capacity, you know, must have been really, really quite challenging, no, to manage in the beginning.
It was. It was because that's self management and self care is not something they teach you in nursing school and probably not in medical school either. And so you get surprised by these kinds of encounters. And of course, we have a heart for people suffering. We all do. And so you hear a story and you see someone going through death and dying and grief, and there's compassion, right?
Mhm.
But the empath part of it takes it to a different level. It's the kind of thing you also take home with you in a different way. You find yourself talking about it a few days later. You find yourself grieving it. Yes, Michelle. You find yourself grieving it like it's yours personally. And then your mind kicks in and you're just like, this doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be so sensitive. I got to be tougher. Like, you're trained to be tough so that you can weather all of the different scenarios that you face. But you don't being tough and building a shell and building a wall is not a healthy way to cope with this at all.
Mhm.
If you train yourself not to feel anything, then you don't feel the good or the bad. And so I found myself at some phase in my career where I'm kind of going through like a robot. I'm pressing the meds and bandaging wounds and doing the things and not able to connect as deeply because I'm so afraid of the negative and then blocking off the positive at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. That's it's a challenge that many of my clients have spoke to me about, and feeling almost like it was something negative that they had to manage or block off instead of really um, understanding or seeing that as a gift, you know?
Mhm.
Um, I I didn't know that I was an intuitive until I really hit the wall running at like 200 miles an hour. That's what it felt like. And the wall just came up and I just went splash, you
Yeah.
know? And that was when my father died. My then husband ran away with somebody else. And my whole world came tumbling down. And from there, there's this different energy that kind of came out to take me onto a journey into this other realm. But I'm really curious about what enabled you to start to take care of your empathic self in a way that was in a way that would enhance her capacity, because I feel like it's a really important part of being a healer, right? This capacity to be able to feel and understand what others are going through, um, and to be able to be in the world as an empath and as an intuitive without being overwhelmed, and seeing the value in that as a nurse. I mean, what were some of the things that happened? And yeah.
It's a classic wounded healer story, right? So here I am out here in the world taking care of other folks and operating as if, that's the only option. I can only take care of others. I don't take, there's no time to take care of me. I do that as nurse, I do that as mom, I do that as wife, until I get to a point in my own health journey where I have no choice but to stop. This is when I hit my wall. I had to stop and look at my own health because at that time I had gallstones, I had a cyst on my pancreas, I was having flare-ups of pancreatitis. So for the first time, I wasn't the nurse, I was the patient in the emergency
Mm.
room, in the hospital, being hospitalized for 7 days, nothing to eat or drink until my pancreas healed. I had surgery not once, but twice, clearing
Wow.
out my insides, I'll call it. They reamed me out. The first time they just got the gallbladder, the gallstones, that's what was causing the pain and the flare ups, and drained the cyst. The second time, exactly 2 years later, after scheduled for after I delivered my son, because the cyst filled back up while I was pregnant. So I'm growing this 2 liter cyst and a full human in my belly at the same time, and
Oh my
having
gosh.
lots of pain and visits to the emergency room and a couple of overnight week-long hospitalizations. And I say all this with a smile now because I survived it, but at the time it was just a nightmare for everyone. My husband having to take me back and forth to the hospital. I had a smaller child at the time, and so she's kind of with and without mom. Mom's kind of checked in and checked out. And after that second surgery, I looked at the surgeon and said, "What do I have to do to not see you again? Like, I'm over this. I don't want to, this is not fun for me.
Right.
I want to break up with you. It's not you, it's me." And
Yeah.
his response, which is classic, the medical perspective was, "There's no cure for this. Like, you're
Mm.
probably gonna be, this is how it goes. I can get you a prescription for some enzymes to help make it easier, but," and I really had to stop and take a hard look at everything. And so I started with evaluating the food and the things I put into my body. But alongside of that, the other things that I'm consuming are relationships, relationship energy and dynamics, patient loads and patient workloads and environments. What kinds of environments do I operate the best in? Do I need to still stay in the hospital working 12-hour night shifts, or is it time to shift my career and do something else that my body, which is now at that point mid 30s, can handle a little bit better than I did in my 20s? So I'm having to
Mhm.
really evaluate the way that I'm operating in life and look at what needs to change. So I started thinking about news, TV, friendships, hobbies. I started looking for hobbies that would feed me instead of always feeling so drained. And I think that
Mhm.
was part of me really starting to understand my energy and being an empath. I had absorbed so much, suffering that I had no outlet to transmute that energy or to just release some of that. I had no tools to release it. And that's when I found yoga. So I started
Mm.
doing yoga and having my own yoga practice and meditation, and found that that was just a game changer for me.
Right. Yeah, because you speak about this how did you find yoga? You know? That's
A local yoga studio ran a introductory special. It was a hot yoga studio, and my husband said, "Let's go do this. This sounds fun." That was one of two ways, and so we went and got introduced to hot yoga. The second way, the second time I really remember, and I don't remember which one came first. I was at my local YMCA. And I was doing like the step classes and the aerobics classes and water aerobics and doing all the things. And I passed by this class, and everybody's laying out in the dark on a mat. And I thought, oh, what kind of class is that? I want to do that. That's the kind of workout I want to do. So I tried it. And of course, it was way tougher than it looked, and the laying down at the end was very well earned reward at the end of a really intense going in and practicing and building
mm,
muscle and all the beautiful things that yoga brings. And so I started practicing yoga at my yoga studio as well. So that became the longer term practice. I remember practicing and then and thinking, oh my gosh, because I was teaching water aerobics at the time. And I thought, I'd like to do this more, not,
mhm.
yeah, more as much as I do the water aerobics, or maybe instead of, but that was a long, long time ago. There weren't as many yoga teacher trainings back then. And so I just kind of let it be that I'll pop in now and then and develop the practice. Another studio downtown did a meditation series. And I thought, why not? I was in a very much a why not mood. I was just exploring and curious, and I had never meditated before, but I thought, why not? I'll try it. And then just the
Yeah.
peace that I felt from it was just like, whoa, I need this. I need this in my life. And it's just kind of spiraled since then.
That's for those of you watching, if you have what are the ways in which you connect with the empathic or the intuitive parts, and how what are the practices you have to enable it to thrive, and at the same time for you to be able to not be overwhelmed, please put it into the chat, because yoga and meditation, um, I think it's become so popular now, that there are many people who are finding out about its benefits, that it's really fascinating that this ancient pathway is really a way of connecting the physical world with the invisible, the seen and the unseen worlds, and somehow um, weaving together a way so that we can live in our physical world and be supported by an energy that might be much greater than just who we are.
Yeah. I can
Oh, so
remember a
yeah.
point, I feel like I was learning to close my eyes and listen from a different place. So a lot
Mm,
of the um, practices I'd done were more do this in this way, in this order kind of practices, like do this step and lift this weight and blah, blah, blah. But yoga, it was like adjust here and listen to your body and see if that feels right. So it was the first time I started to really turn inward and listen to what my body was saying back to me. It wasn't the push through and do more of this and go harder and go faster. It was pause and listen. I was like, oh, that's a different conversation. I have not paused and listened to my body before. Let's see what it has to say.
yes, yes. That's I feel like, so I'm sorry, people, I'm trying to deal with this technology at the same time. But I love it. Molly's saying journeying work grounds me so much. Yeah. So it's another way of entering into that unseen, and being in relationship with the unseen world. And Michelle says yoga, meditation, walking mindfully, living mindfully.
Mhm.
Um, so all of these practices, pointing towards something about, again, it's sort of like a relationship with that invisible world, that, as you said, to be still and to listen, and to listen into oneself, and somehow something other starts to develop, right? There's some kind of a capacity, it feels like, to hold a much bigger, I don't know, it really makes me think of when we're stressed, usually we go up into our heads and our breathing gets really shallow and we're just like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so much and I'm overwhelmed, and it's all up in here somehow.
Yeah.
And any practice that can take us from that, the mind flipping and operating at really fast speeds, which is what the mind is really good at doing, which is wonderful, but it can't deal with certain things. So it goes into that round, circular thing of panic and out of control. And somehow, if we can come back down into the body, to find a way to ground all of that energy, it really, really starts to open up, I feel, a capacity to really listen to what your empathic sense and your intuitive sense is perhaps communicating with you about. Right? Because, we're not meant to perhaps go out and rescue the world. I think that's where the overwhelm comes in as an empath. Like, I feel this and I have to do something.
And
Does that make sense?
you have to find a balance, because if you stay in rescue mode, you'll burn out the system. You just do. For some people, they'll get physical symptoms. For other people, they'll have more of the emotional symptoms, the stress, the worry, the nightmares or inability to sleep, ruminating on things. The system's just burnt out because it's been in go mode for too long. You got to find balance. You got to find periods of rest, that grounding, that centering, that slowing down, the listening to the body.
So, you speak about the self-care and the self-healing with the holistic work. I mean, what are some of the self-care things that you use for yourself in your
Um,
work?
I have found, so any kind of movement practice that I can do, even if it's as simple as getting out to walk the dog, who is a puppy right now, let me just say. So walking her is not always a walk in the park. It's more like getting pulled down the street, but I digress. Walking, yoga, jump rope, anything counts as long as you're moving your body. And I can tell my body needs to move because I feel more restless and irritated and, kind of jumpy. And I'm looking for little things to do around the house. And that's when I listen in, it's like, okay, my body needs to burn some energy. I need to get out. I need to sit under the sun. I need to stretch. I need to do something, dance. I love when we do our dance together, and that really gets me into all the parts of my body. So remembering some sort of consistent movement practice is helpful for me. My most frequent go-to is contemplative practices like journaling. I'll get up in the morning and I'll pull a card and reflect on that card and think about, what does this mean for me, or what is the focus for the day? And at the end of the day, I might journal how that showed up in my life. Sometimes I'll do expressive writing prompts where I know that I need to purge the brain. So, like we were talking a little while ago about how the brain could just go and go and go and go. I give it a job. I write it. Writing is one of my, top expression methods. And so I'll just write until I don't have. I think Julia Cameron, the artist way, the morning pages, you do just 3 pages of writing, free write, doesn't matter about punctuation or sense or anything, but you're basically just dumping the brain. And that mechanism of getting things out of your brain, down through your arm, out of your hand in writing actually slows down the brain. So it's a really good way to slow down that ruminating, because you have to kind of slow down for your hand to keep up with your brain. So it slows down the thoughts. So that happens to be really, really, really helpful for me. And for the people I've found that have a hard time writing, I think it's because they're too caught up in the this needs to sound a certain way, or it needs, or I'm not a good speller, or whatever, all the things we associate with writing. And this really is just a practice of brain dumping. You can burn it when you're done, or tear it into 1,000 pieces. Like, it doesn't have to be publishable. So those are my main two go-tos. I have been in a dream circle for the last year, and that has been a really powerful way for me to get process at a subconscious level some of the things, some of the patterns, some of the beliefs that need to be challenged. That's soul care for me. So look at the body, the physical care, the emotional care can be the journaling, the purging, and then the dream work and astrology and things like that can be more soul care. So I understand who I am at a soul level and what my journey or my path is this go round. Kind of takes me to that deeper work. And I might not necessarily do that every day. That's more of a, our circles are monthly. And so um, I'll do that more periodically.
Wow, that's yeah. Yeah, I can really relate to that, and thank you, for
Mhm.
sharing that, because it really reminded me of the time, I haven't been doing it, but there was a period of about 5 years where I was doing the morning pages every day, and what was really interesting, because in the morning pages, for those of you who I think many of you are familiar, but for those of you who are not, you're not supposed to stop your pen. And it's like either 3 pages or 30 minutes. You just continuously write. And if there's nothing, you go nothing, 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 nothing. You just have to keep on moving your pen over the paper. And what happened was really fascinating because after I forget how long it was that all this, gibberish and everything would come out, something akin to channeling started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
This other voice came in and started like I mean, I had no idea where these things were coming from, but it was like these wisdom teachings started to come out every now and then. It wasn't always, and it freaked me out. You know, I was like going, "Is this like Jekyll and Hyde? Is there like another another
Another person
personality?"
inside.
And I'm like going, but it was one of the really powerful ways in which I started to also develop that the intuitive muscle of being able to listen to this um, to this other voice that wanted to come in but couldn't, because as you said, because there was so much junk in there, and that had to be drained out first, and then suddenly it became really, really much easier to hear. And that was a surprising discovery for me because that wasn't the reason why I was doing it. I was doing it because I felt very anxious, and I also wanted to find my creative energy back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the creative energy I feel is really, really connected in with that connection with the sacred, with the intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and somehow when there is too much junk or too much stress and we're not, yeah, letting it flow out or letting it go in some form or other, which incorporates, just as you said, all those different spheres, it somehow blocks our native creativity, our native connection with life, our native sense of joy, which comes through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, it's it's an amazing thing that life will show us these. It's almost like a trap door. You think you're trapped, and then there's this door that opens up, and suddenly there's another universe that's waiting for you. It's a completely different way of seeing life that starts to open up.
It is. I remember the first time I heard someone say that we all have the answers. We know exactly what we're supposed to do. We just have to get still enough to hear the answers. Now it's just like, yep, nope. We don't all have the answers. Like I fought that so hard because there have been many times where I was at a crossroad and I just genuinely didn't know which way to turn or what was the right choice. But I can also tell you with almost 100% certainty that I could not or did not get still enough in those moments either to listen. I was still listening to this conversation, this rambling, the noise. And if I had found a way then to just purge the noise, and eventually I did, then I could get to, and of course, the answer you hear sometimes is not, sometimes it's so simple, you're just like, well, duh. Been stressing and worrying over this all this time. And I just had to go left. I just had to drop that one responsibility. It's just like, whoa, yeah, there's so
Yeah.
much wisdom inside. There's so many answers. We just have to find the door to open to let them out.
I wonder if you can share with us, excuse me, that in living with this inner alchemy, you speak of this whole work with the soul, the physical, the emotional, the mental, de-stressing and coming more in connection with your true being, I guess, in a way, as inner alchemy, and how that manifested in your work life.
Mm. I can remember one exercise I did with a teacher. So here's the setting. I'm in a position that I know is not my long term position. I'm actually counting the days until I could find my way out of this position, right? It was just so stressful. And I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And she says to me, I want you to write out your ideal job description. Not well, that's not going to get me out of this job any faster. But what she was introducing to me then was the power of this inner alchemy. If I change the conversation that's happening in my mind about what work is supposed to look like, because in some way I chose that work environment. Not in some way, I clearly, definitely chose that and had gotten very accustomed to that environment. It was the norm for me, but I had reached a level in my spiritual path that I couldn't tolerate. I didn't fit into it anymore. And so I had to start reworking some of the programming, doing that inner alchemy to make the inside start to match what my heart wanted, to make my mind catch up with what my heart and soul needed for the next level. And so as I start writing this new job description and describing the people I wanted to work with and what the environment was going to look like and just start dreaming. I want to work downtown. I want a building with windows. I want a team that does standing huddles and eats donuts together and like all kinds of weird little details. And then I did the assignment, prayed over it, folded it up, put it in a book, put it away. 2 or 3 months later, out of the blue, I get an email from an employer in a downtown office, really cool work group. We think we've got a position that you'd be a good fit for. I hadn't applied for this job. I didn't even know it existed. But that's the inner work. It's like once you change your mind about what you deserve or what you can have or what's possible, you'll see your world shift around you. It just starts to shift. Because for one thing, if you're looking for blue, you're going to find blue. So I stopped looking for red. I want blue. This is the life I want. This is the world I want. This is the career I want. Rather than belly aching at the water cooler about how awful this job is and how mean so and so is, I walked away from the water cooler and went to my coloring board, my drawing board, and said, this is what I would like. And it had to be a conversation here that started with me in the heart doing that soul work of I want this and I deserve it. It required writing affirmations because the repetitive writing can help to reprogram your brain. It seems silly, but if you write I am enough times, enough days in a row, somewhere you're going to start believing it. So it was basic little things like that that added up to me really being able to shift and come out of a place. And I will tell you where it gets really funny. It really gets really tricky. So a year into this new job, this dream job, I love this place where I am and things are going great. I've gotten all the things that I asked for. Then COVID hits. All of my nursing colleagues are going through it. They're at the bedside, they're stressed, the workload, the exposure, the sickness, the grieving and the death and dying. It's just taking a tremendous toll on my colleagues. And now I'm having, I guess, what you would call like survivor's guilt. I'm not at the bedside struggling with them anymore. I feel bad because I can't contribute more. What can I do? How can I show up? And so that's the tricky part, is because now that I've, kind of created this job and this lifestyle that supports me, I remember and I still have compassion for the nurses who were doing what I was doing just some years ago. And I want to extend myself and be there for them as well. So that's how I kind of shifted into, well, this is how I can show up. I can offer meditations. I can offer, a resource for people to unplug and do some self-care. Can't join you at the bedside anymore because I didn't write that one in the script, but I can do
Uh-huh.
these other things.
That's really, really powerful. Thank you for sharing that, LaShanda, because it makes me think of the work by Bruce Lipton,
Mhm.
um, of this that we can reprogram our biology, we can reprogram. And I also think of the work with Don Miguel Ruiz, and
Mhm.
he called it dreaming. And he said, we are the creators of our lives. And in order to shift the dream that you are in, you have to shift the dreamer. And and the ways to shift the dreamer is to become a lot more conscious about what it is that you actually want to dream or to create as your life. And if your life isn't something that you want, there is some part of you that is actually manifesting that. So what is that? And to be able to converse with that, to heal that, and at the same time to start to become aware of shifting. And you can't shift something that you're not aware of,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And so to become aware and to know what it is that you want to manifest. And as you move towards that, what are the things that needs to be let go? What are the things, this morning I was drawing some cards, and it's a really wonderful way. I like doing divination work, oracling and drawing the cards, because then you are leaving it in a way, coming out of your logical mindset and what I want and what I don't want, to something other, and opening to that something other. So
Mm-hmm.
it's entering into the receptive mode. And for many of us, especially I think those of us who are very receptive, who are very intuitive and empathic, it's a place that I think we connect. I know I connected with danger. And so it seems safer for me to be in the giving position rather than being in the receiving position.
Mm-hmm.
And being in the giving position, there is a certain amount of control that I'm exercising in how I give, the way I give. And but when to become totally receptive feels incredibly vulnerable. And it's that balance. And as one of my another teacher said to me, if you're not standing on the edge, you're taking up too much space. so I
Yes.
drew the card stand on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And for one of my questions, and it's really about coming into that receptive place of when you face the unknown. You're facing the unknown, which means you don't know. And not knowing, the most beautiful thing in the not knowing is that letting go, to surrender, to open, to listen, to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And and that receiving is not synonymous with being a doormat. That's the I think the difference, to know that in the receiving there is also your inner warrior that is present, who can say at the doorway, no, to be able to have and trust your own capacity to discern what is abusive, or what is not at that point for your highest good to take in. And it's difficult. It is a difficult thing to navigate, because one can become delusional in this as well,
Right.
and that's when it's always good to have a good mentor or a good friend who can say, girlfriend, you just relax, okay?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
take a breath.
Yeah.
And so this dance of being an intuitive and navigating through the world also means that at certain points, it's really, really beneficial to keep on re-looking at and recalibrating your own defensive system in a way. Where are the boundaries, and are the boundaries that was put in before, are they still relevant? And it comes down to this place of being on the edge, and you might get hit by certain things. And at the same time, it's in a way to learn where you are now at in terms of your soul work. And you might find all of a sudden that the things that had devastated you before actually are no longer energies that will.
Yeah.
That it's yeah, something like that.
Yeah. You brought up a couple things, and I'm hoping I can pull them both back in. So I like what you said about being an active or being a dreamer. And I think it goes to this idea of intuitive being receptive, but like actively receptive. You're looking for signals from spirit, from the environment. You're looking for things that don't match. If you're in a relationship and it's abusive, does this match with your value? You're asking questions. You're curious. You're not just going along status quo. We're doing this because we got to pay the bills. Like, you're not using any of the practical. You're actually checking in on a deep level. How do I feel when I walk in this door? That's the receptive piece. You're receiving feedback from your body, from the environment, from the stimulants, and saying, okay, does this match the view that I have or the vision that I have for my life? So it is a very active process when you really tap into it. It's very intentional. You're listening now, really, really listening. But when you mentioned about the dreamers, I'm reading this book now by Robert Moss called Active Dreaming.
Yeah.
And he talks about, so he talks a lot in all of his books about sleeping dreams versus waking dreams. And of course, we all know, we have these dreams in our sleep, and sometimes they come and tell us messages or give us a chance to rehearse a role or a scenario or something. But we overlook these waking dreams, these waking scenarios, and how much meat we can get out of this scenario. And that is a very active, receptive process of picking something apart. So something as simple as me going to the shoe store to pick out some new tennis shoes. If I write it down as a waking dream, I'm writing about the environment, the people who helped me with my shoes, how it felt, how my body felt when I was in those shoes. Now I'm waking up to my life. I'm not just doing the thing because I'm doing the thing. I'm seeing how doing the thing impacts my body. I'm choosing my shoes based on how my hips feel and if my spine is in alignment, and if not just based on the price, which is what Miss Budget Shopper usually does. Now I'm making some different judgments based on all of the information I have coming in. That's being an active participant, an even more active participant in your life, to get you to this vision that you have. If I want to care for my body, then I'm going to choose pants and shoes that support this life that I have. I'm going to be really intentional about the scene that I set up and the supporting actors and the costumes. That's what working with Waking Dreams is about. You're manipulating all these different parts of your life to see, well,
Mm.
what'll happen if I do this differently? And so you get to be a little more like exploring and engaging more actively with your world. And I think that's part of tapping into your intuitive side. Your body knows, especially intuitively, what's right for it, what's not a fit, what's not in alignment. So now we're just listening for the yes or the no from our body and our heart.
Yep, yep. No, I love that. I love that, and I love that, you know, to to active it's an active receptivity. I like that, you know? It's active listening, active receptivity, and that part is with that constant checking in with what is real, what is true, what is, yeah. Do I like this? You know, it's fascinating because it reminds me also of one of the practices that I do is I would take something like, especially when I'm going crystal shopping,
Mm-hmm.
because my mind goes, wow, that's pretty, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and then I usually hold it in my left hand
Mm-hmm.
and I sense into the energy of it.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly the stone itself tells me if it wants to be with me or not. There's a,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's going to be with me, what kind of energy it might be bringing with it. And it's, but I've never done it with shoes and clothes. And I'm like, I totally love shoes and clothes.
Right,
So I'm
right.
going to start,
You
I'm
should
going to start doing that going, how do I feel? You know, because it's true. It's one of the ways in which we express ourselves as humans is in the way that we present ourselves. And you know, it's in one of the shamanic practices that I studied, it was like having many masks, that we can put on the mask that we want as long as the mask doesn't become our identity and it becomes so tight that we can't take it off anymore, which
Mm-hmm.
is when the stresses come in, you know,
Yeah.
because we first started out maybe with that first job, you know. I remember going, okay, so if I want to get a loan from a bank, I might have a better chance going in my businesswoman mode, you know,
Right.
with my suit on and with my power suit on, and
Yeah.
sitting down and carrying on a conversation in a way. But it doesn't mean that I'm lying. It means I'm bringing forth another part of who I am, which is also real and it's true.
Yes.
Um, and a different thing, like if I'm going to go and have fun with my girls, you know, and going out like to a restaurant and putting on something that's completely different from when I would go and negotiate with a bank manager,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that there are, it's like play. He, you know, Don Miguel used to call it controlled folly.
Mm.
That it's because I was really stuck on being authentic. I said, you know, that I want to be authentically me, but I have no idea who I am. Oh, he said, oh, well, you'll find out. But you know, he said, but play with different
Mm.
masks and the different get-ups, because behind all of that is your authentic self, which I feel is what you were saying, to tap into and listen to how she is reacting. Is she saying yes or no? Right?
Right. I like this idea of playing and trying on different masks. And what it makes me think about, especially like in this professional realm, I wish that we could try on this career. And there are ways to do it, like you can go and volunteer. Try it on and see if it fits you. Sometimes we've been given a mask, a challenge, a career passed down through the family, somebody else's
Mm.
expectations. This will make you a lot of money. And we take that mask and we run forth and we try to prosper, and then we're burnt out. I've seen so many people leave, after law school and medical school, and then they go and do something completely different 10 years down the road after all the blood, sweat, and tears. And you think that's crazy, but it's probably because they took on a mask permanently that wasn't theirs. And so, how can
Right.
we get curious about trying to, even if it's within your profession? I can remember having conversations with colleagues, and they're like, I'm going to apply for this job. And my response is, what is it about the job you think you'll love? Oh, it pays really well. Okay. And what else about the job that you think you'll
Hmm.
love? Because at the end of the day, the paycheck is never the thing. It's the hook, it could be the noose, but it's never the
Right.
thing that brings us joy. Do you like working with this patient population? Do you like working in the community? Do you like working at night? Like there's gotta be something else that matches your soul's desire, your rhythm, your flow, your energy level to keep you from fast tracking down the burnout path.
Yeah.
Because if you're not careful, you will position yourself to be well on your way to burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really wise. And that's so true. I feel, I know that you've been in that world, in a way, a corporate world with working in universities and hospitals and, and navigating your way through that and successfully navigating your way into finding that place that works for you,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and having that resilience, right? To
yeah,
have experienced all of those things. So I feel like it's not about not making mistakes and it's not about not suffering those burnouts from, I guess, you know, a- after you live for a while, it's like, sometimes even looking back at one's own life and going, well, that was a mistake, but not bemoaning it, but to look at it as a really powerful, amazing gift from life itself. Because it sounds like from all of those things that you learned, you were able to navigate through this ocean of the world that we live
hmm
in. And, in the little time that we have left, there was something that you wrote in that wonderful book that Laura Cornell published, Awakening the Divine Feminine: 18 Stories of Healing, Inspiration, and Empowerment. And you were talking about how, as a Black woman, you were expected to be strong. Because I feel like that's another one of the masks that got put onto you,
yes,
right? Which is
yes.
also a mask but it's a tricky one because it's also external as well as internal.
hmm hmm
Because people see race and people see color as well as these expectations within that certain group and facing like the mixed racial groups as you go out into the work world. And so do you want to would you be able to talk a little bit about that and how that impacted you?
That has been one of the hardest bits of programming to undo because it's so deeply rooted. I can remember many times I brag, I come from a line of strong Black women. And, there's this unwritten message that, as a Black woman, you got to work twice as hard and twice as fast to get half the opportunities and less of the pay. And so when you go into the world with that mindset, you're setting yourself up to work twice as hard and to always feel like you have to prove yourself even more. And so there's no option but to be strong. You don't get to whine about this thing that was passed over or that, raise you didn't get or, this school that you didn't get in. You don't get to whine about any of that. You just got to dig your heels in and work a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And I may have a little touch of perfectionism or competitiveness or something built in me as well that just amps it up even more. And so the level of drive, and I'm still deprogramming this. I'm realizing now as I'm speaking of the level of drive is just relentless. And that's part of why, my body will shut down on me because I can't mentally let up sometimes and just have a day where I am whatever the opposite of strong is, or I thought it was. So, for some people, automatically, maybe I thought it meant weak. I couldn't take care of myself. I was dependent on something or someone else, or I failed at something. But being receptive feels like a very strong position too. Now I'm calling in resources and collaboration and support. And that is smart and strong, and not just so physically strong and mentally strong that you're powering through everything. Strong is asking for help. Strong is admitting what you don't know so that someone can actually help you and fill in the gaps for you. Strong is being vulnerable with your partners and close inner circle of friends so that they get to know the real you and you get to show up in the world as the real you somewhere in your life. So now I'm kind of redefining what strong is. And I'm willing to still be strong, but it's got to look different now. It can't look like pushing through and getting one more accomplishment to prove that I'm worthy of the thing that I want to get. Like, that's not it. That's not it. It's just not going to work anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what was your experience like working in hospitals and contexts where you were dealing with the identity from within as being just you, but also with all the historical and ancestral things of being you, of coming from a line of strong women, that you are coming from a line of strong Black women. I think you had an Irish in there somewhere too. I remember when we went to Ireland and you said yes.
Yeah.
Pardon.
They did
I was like, yeah,
the
so there's,
ancestry.com. It had
yeah.
good little slice of Irish in there.
So there's
Which I was
all of
surprised at.
these different
Yeah,
things
competing
coming in, but
languages.
and then navigating in the American work world of hospitals and universities, where I imagine much of it tends to be more white, perhaps.
Yeah,
I don't know if how that was for you, working within the context as a Black woman, navigating in
yeah.
this. Yeah.
That's part of why it's been such a long journey to unravel that belief about I have to be strong, I have something to prove. Is because I have been in a lot of mostly white spaces. Grade school, language and math classes, gifted and talented programs, and university level. My nursing class, for example, of 120 nursing students, there were 6 Black students in that whole class. And so it was nothing for me to be the only person of color in a circle, in a clinical group, in a classroom. And what that feels like is I've got to prove something for my people. Like I'm
Mm.
carrying the weight of I can't let us down. I've got to represent. And there's that belief doesn't get checked. If I am the only, and then I don't show up as my best self or potentially as the best in the room, then they're going to have this impression of all Black people. It's pretty much
Mm.
how my mind is working through this. And so that leads to me pushing, 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 driving, 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 because I know what the impression is, and I have to prove to them that I'm not the dullest tack in the box. Like that's the mindset that I go into these rooms in with
Mm.
and into all of the spaces. And even if I've been in spaces like historically Black college, where there are people like me, people that look like me, women in positions of leadership, women of color in positions of leadership, and I have role models that now I can look up to that look like me, we still are situated alongside and compared with universities that are primarily white. And so now you collectively are doing this thing where we've got something to prove. We need to show you that we're this or that, and we can do, twice as much with half as many resources. And so it's a really tricky thing to navigate because A lot, if you just look at like hiring practices, there aren't as many people of color hired, especially when you get up into leadership positions and some of these elite opportunities. There's not representation there. And people will tell you historically it's because, you know, they're just such a small portion of the population that that's why they're not, or that they're not interested. And none of that is true. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many systemic things in place that keep people like me from being in some of these opportunities. I was just telling my friend yesterday that, you know, I was in a faculty position where I was the first Black woman or Black person that had been in that department ever.
Wow.
And that I felt the weight of that, you know? And so what that looks like on a day-to-day basis from well-meaning folks, even in a good, fairly healthy environment, is me being tapped to answer all the questions about minority life and issues and how would we solve this? There's only so many diversity committees I can be on and still do my job. You'll hear a lot of academics that are people of color complain about that, is that they get tapped to come in and represent and be the voice and provide some diversity to different councils and teams, and then they get stretched thin. Now
Mm-hmm.
their workload is way, 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 way down. And so they need to practice self-care at an even higher level to manage some of the hidden stresses, some of the unique stresses that they face or that we face in those spaces as well.
Wow, yeah, that's a really good reminder, LaShanda, because, you know, there's a tendency, and I think it's lazy, actually, to put it
Mm-hmm.
straight. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit of a laziness from the mainstream, population, mostly male, mostly white, um, to tap on people of color to lead them in diversity. I think they should hire specialists who
Yeah.
specialize in that and pay them properly
Yeah.
to diversify instead of expecting the people of color that's working already to do an extra thing to help them come to some kind of a understanding or a recognition of what can be done. There can it's I think it's really great to have one's voice heard, um but to there has to be some other system than simply only from the inside. And there are people, and also it's a specialty task to reformat an organization to become much more inclusive. I
Yeah.
remember somebody asking me, um, and I was like, well, I'm not a specialist. I know what I feel, but I'm sort of like you. I've mostly navigated in mostly all white situations. So I learned very, very quickly, well, not very, very quickly, perhaps, but I mean, it's been like that since I was 7 years old. So you learn instinctively how to navigate within when you're only with Japanese people or when you're with mostly white people, or you navigate according to their values. And to such an extent that in a way I've had to really look at what my own values are,
Absolutely.
and understand that whatever it is that I'm doing at this time, it's a very interesting mixture of everything.
Yeah.
It's not it's whatever we've understood in terms of our spiritual work or in terms of our work. um, it's a mixture of where we come from,
Mm-hmm.
our histories, and also, you know, pointing to, I don't know, some kind of an opening within us of our own potential and possibility. And I'm curious to know, because I've never known that kind of a place where I'm completely free to be myself.
Mm.
But I doubt that many people actually do.
Yeah.
We all have our constraints, you know. Um, even though there might be more constraints on a in a society like our current society here in the United States, there are certain racial constraints because of
Mhm.
the way the whole thing has been built up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's it's to look at, well, who am I without these constraints? And it's sort of like that practice you did about writing about your job. What is it that you
Mhm.
want? I
Mhm.
feel like it's a practice that would be really beneficial for many of us working in the healing and sacred, you know, divine feminine, all of these circles of holistic work that we do to really envision in as much detail as possible what kind of world is it that we want to be a part of birthing forward, because we're in the midst of it right now. We're in the midst of the chaos of old systems breaking down, and we don't know where we're going yet. And I feel like it would be really beneficial to have these practices of writing, of dreaming, journaling.
Mm.
What is it that, not only for yourself, but also what kind of world do we want to create? You know?
And you know, you really have to call, because this is deep, deep, hard work. Me picking apart what I've internalized from the system versus what's mine culturally, ancestrally, who I am as a person, what my lineage is. That's
Mhm.
hard work to do. You got to comb through and pull that out and pull that apart. And it raises a lot of emotional issues and
Yeah.
insecurities and questions and anger and resentment, and you have to be adamant about your soul care, your self care in that process. You need to have
Mm.
safe spaces to witness and be witnessed. You need to have, a way to vent and dump all the gunk out of your brain. You need to have periods of rest and stillness. This can't be something you tackle like, a warrior and you go at it 100 miles an hour. This needs to be a meandering kind of thing where you go through it at the pace that you can handle. Some for whatever reasons, physical reasons, mental, all kinds of limitations we have, we all need to go at different paces, and you have to kind of respect that about people too. We have different capacity for how fast we can navigate this, but there's no choice but to go forward.
Yeah.
Like, we have to move through this thing. We can do it individually, but we can do it collectively as groups. And I
Yeah.
like this idea, and I've played with this in Dream Circle before, but this active dreaming. How do we actively co-create this new world that we want to? What does it look like? How do we wake up from the matrix and wake up from this trance of what's been going on in our society and start to envision something collectively? And if you had a circle like this, who is it comprised of? What does this sacred council look like? What
Mhm.
ages, what backgrounds, what professions, what skin tones, what cultures, what languages? Who's at the table, or does the table look like all purple elephants? Like, the table has to be intentional as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think we are at a sweet spot now with all of the tools and all the resources. We had many, many years to start to wake up to a different way of listening and engaging with the world. Now there's some deeper work that needs to be done, and we have at our disposal some deeper tools to really get there and to get there collectively.
That's, yeah, well said. And thank you for that, reminder of doing this work with great awareness and self-care, because it's true. It's like going into a wild forest, and there is a lot of magic there, but there is also a lot of brambles and fallen branches, and things flying through the so to really be mindful. And yes, having it in a group or having a cohort is really, really helpful. And yeah, well, this is really, really fun, and I think we could just keep on going, but for right now we will bring it to a close. And thank you so much, LaShanda, for
Yeah.
joining me in conversation. It's always such a pleasure to
Mm-hmm.
hang out with you, you know.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and also I wanted to, before we sign off, I wanted to bring up, so for those of you who would like to connect with you and find out more, to go to soulkyoga.net to
Yes.
um, and see what LaShanda is up to and sign up, for to receive her um,
Yes.
emails
Newsletters. Yes. Yes.
and
Because I'll send out information about upcoming events. I do these mindful birding events and have recorded meditations and all kinds of ways that you can play and engage and rest and get centered and grounded in this crazy, crazy world.
yeah, yep. And the chaotic times are coming because we're now in the threshold space, of the new hasn't been birthed out yet, and the old is crumbling around us. So, yep, it's time to
You're sitting in the
do a
goo.
lot of care. Yeah, it's
Yes.
it's 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 great. Yes, great. And I think don't you there was also like a meditation that if you are interested that you can go here
Yes.
to buy.
Yes,
Yes.
and that's a different link. I think it'll say 18 Springs, and they are guided meditation. So I do this class once a month, and then, but a real time live class just doesn't fit everybody's schedule. So we've started posting the recording, so you can post it. You can listen to it as many times as you want to. It'll be yours at that point, so that you have something to ground you. It's Yoga Nidra, and I love Yoga Nidra for that
Yeah.
inner alchemy work.
Wonderful. Yep, yep. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. And Molly says, thank you both. This was such an important conversation. I loved it. So thank you, Molly, for listening in. And for all those of you listening now or listening later, thank you again. And listen to all the other podcasts. I've had amazing women come in and speak. So thank you so much. And Lola also says, this is great. Thank you. Thank you, Lola, for listening in. Yay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. And many, many blessings to you. And so, yes, to all of you
Thank you,
in
Shannon.
this time of great chaos. Chaos is part of Mother Nature and part of the Mother Goddess. It's not all is order, and out of chaos, great creative energy and the new things are born. So, yes. All right.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. And big blessing. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.